Iyiti, and welcome to the Communion Experience. This is your host, the Nasit Bidi, Ra Sanku Kepper, Chief and Head Priest of the Temple of Anu, here to facilitate our bi-weekly discussions about how to walk in peace and empowerment by way of the teachings of the ancient Kemetic legacy. So let us proceed to get into what's known as the word of the day. Now, the word of the day is when we take one word from the ancient hieroglyphic language known as the Sesh Medu Neter, which translates as the divine written words. So we take one word and we extrapolate its cultural, its metaphysic, its esoteric, and its possible practical applications on how we could use these teachings in our current lives and our situations. So this approach is often done by many mystical traditions. You may have heard of Kabbalahism, which is a mystical tradition of the Hebrew people or the ancient Canaanite people. So when they approach their language, they approach the mystical implications of the Hebrew language. If you know anything about the Sufi mystics, when they approach the Arabic language, they are approaching it, searching for its mystical implications. Since there are not too many people on the planet that's qualified to actually translate the Sesh Medu, it's going to be few and far in between that you'll find qualified people that's able to search for the spiritual implications of the Sesh Medu. You'll find translations, but oftentimes, in my opinion, they leave something to be desired. So let us get into it. The word of the day is rakette. Rakette is the word of the day, and it translates as one who knows. It consists of a grouping of three letters: the open mouth, which is the letter R, and its sound value is R or Re or Yira. The second letter is the letter K, or the placenta. It's a circular symbol with lines through it. It's a placenta, and it's the letter K, but its sound value is Ka, as in K-H, Ka, K-H-A, Ka. And lastly, you have the loaf of bread, which is the letter T, which sound value is Ta or T. So here you have the word rakette or rakat or rakata or raketi or irkata or irketi. Now, oftentimes in the language, you'll have at the end of a word, it's called a determinative, and it's often an abstract symbol giving you a context clue on how to determine how to approach the translation of the word, because many times many words have the same or consist of the same symbols, and they actually sound the same, but you have to look at the determinative at the end of the word to determine which way to go with your translation. Nevertheless, it is a language of symbols, and symbols are the language of the subconscious mind. Stories are the language of the subconscious mind. Metaphors are the language of the subconscious mind. In all ATR and all ancient cultures, they mainly taught by way of stories, because it was sinking or putting seeds in your subconscious mind for you to germinate, to live yourself into the truth. So when we look at this word with the R, with the open mouth, the placenta, as well as the piece of bread. So we're going to put the piece of bread to the side, because the root to the word rakette is rek, to know. So what do these symbols have to do with to know? And then let me tell you now, like what I was taught by my teachers is the Medu Neter is only as deep as you are. So I have a background in esoterics and metaphysics and high spiritual practice. So when I look at the Medu Neter, I'm going to come up with some different conclusions than someone else who doesn't have a background in metaphysics or esoteric philosophy. So there always be a same or similar base understanding, but how we extrapolate deeper and higher meanings or further meanings is going to be a different process. So when I look at the mouth, I consider the mouth as a transformer. What does the mouth do? The mouth actually masticates foods, and it's before it sends it to the stomach to prepare the stomach to convert the food into a usable form of energy for the body. What else does the mouth do? It translates information from the heart and mind into the ethers or into existence. That's called communication. So the mouth implies transmission of something, but the transmission of what? Then we go to the placenta. Now, according to science, the placenta is a temporary organ in the uterus, and it is used to connect the fetus to the uterus, and it feeds the fetus oxygen and nutrients, and then as well as it extrapolates or excretes waste by way of the umbilical cord. So this placenta exists because as a result of the union of male and female to create a child in the uterus. So the child is being fed oxygen and nutrients to become something. So we look at the placenta as something that's making you aware, to know, to make you aware of the inner workings or the inner mechanisms of a thing. Or not just a thing, a person, place, or thing. Being aware of the inner workings of a person, place, or thing. So now we can take this word rakette, which is root, which is rek, which means to know, and we could put it into a phrase. Now the phrase would be rek kesef. Rek kesef means one who knows themselves, or one who knows himself, or rek keses, one who knows herself. Rek kesef, one who knows himself, or rek keses, one who knows herself. Now, when we look at what we just broke down with about the placenta, about being fed and nourished, we look at what is that, how is that connecting us to knowledge of self? So when you look at knowledge of self or understand the concept of knowledge of self, you have to understand what traits that you get from your mother, what traits that you get from your father. In a lot of ATR traditions and African traditions, they encourage you to know all the at least 7 generations of your ancestors back, because it's said that your current personality exists of 7 generations worth of ancestors in your blood. So you have your father, and you're being fed by DNA and genetics of your father, DNA and genetics of your mother, as well as the ancestors that's flowing through the blood in your veins. And we cannot forget our cosmic connection, our spiritual mother and our spiritual father, meaning you have a part of your consciousness that represents the masculine connection with the cosmic source, and there's a part of your consciousness that represents your connection with the sacred feminine source of the divine. So we have a word that we call the creator. We say the Yit Mut Netir, the father, mother, creator, or the mother, father, creator, because in our tradition, we like to recognize balance. So you're being fed and nurtured from the mother, father, creator, your biological mother and father, as well as your ancestors. So when you become aware of these inner workings and these inner mechanisms making up your persona or your personality, that for healthy individuals, that tends to be an exciting thing, to find out more about why you do what you do and why you don't do what you do, why you sit a certain way, why is the inflections in your voice a certain way, why do your eyes look like that, why is your skin that texture. So when you begin to know your ancestors and know your mother and father and know your spiritual mother and father, that process is exciting to get to know who you are. And that feeling is called Aut Ab. Aut Ab, it means expansion of the heart. Ab is the heart, also known as the mind. So expansion of the heart and expansion of the mind translate to the experience that we call joy. So now when you get to know yourself and you're excited about knowing yourself and you're glad that you're investigating and finding out new parts of yourself you never knew about, that leads to Merjesef or Merjeses, meaning love of himself, love of herself. So to know oneself leads to loving of oneself, which then concludes to being at peace and satisfaction with oneself. And as you know, as we talked about before, each communion, each lesson is going to build off of the last lesson. And in the last session, we talked about the word hatep, which means peace and satisfaction, an offering of peace and satisfaction. So you know yourself, to love yourself, to be at peace with yourself and satisfied with yourself. Now, with that said, let us begin as we open the way, as we broach the topic of today's discussion, which is the goddess Ujat in protecting your peace. The Neteret, which is the proper word, the Neteret, not goddess, the Neteret Ujat in protecting your peace. So now, before we get into that, let's have a primer discussion as we get into that. So I want you to take a few moments, and I just want you to just think about all the conscious books you ever read in your life. Think about all those books that grace the bookshelves in your bedrooms or the bookshelves in your living room or even the floors of your living spaces in your room and your living spaces. Think about all of the lectures that you have been in person to learn from the masters, sitting at the feet of the masters. What about the provocative YouTube videos? What about the videos that you watched and listened online, the provocative TikTok informative videos? What about even tense or intense conversations or even arguments? Or I don't know, maybe you lost friends or family due to this rare and arduous path that we walk upon. A path that may have taught you sooner, before, later, or in a brutal way, the contrast and the connection between being lonely and alone. Walking this path, getting this information, getting this knowledge of self, coming across many individuals that you think are your tribe, only to find out that you're not so aligned or in tune or vibrating the same as you thought, which may sometimes cause you to fall back and retreat, to go back to rakette, to know your own self, or go back to murder Joseph, or murder Joseph, love himself or love herself, instead of trying to convince people in the world or having conversations about who you say you are. Do you even know who you are, or do you only think you know who you are? And if you know who you are you conducting in yourself in ways that affirms who you truly are? Do you know the difference between being spiritual and trying to perfect or project perfection? A lot of times in our community, if you're trying to be serious about your spiritual path, most people think that you have to be perfect and there's no room for mistakes. Some people say you got to, or think you got to have it all together, or you got nothing together at all. But I'm just trying to say, or making a statement, that there's a difference between being authentically spiritual and trying to go walk around and projecting like you're perfect. So now consider this. If you're really tuned in and tapped in the spirit in an authentic way into the source, which is the Neter, and the Neteru, and the ancestors working through you, then in your own right, you're perfect in your imperfections. And sometimes you're going to clash with individuals outside of yourself, oftentimes family and loved ones who are not ideally connected with their source, which is the Neter, the Neteru, and their ancestors. And sometimes these people try to seduce and reduce you and try to convince you to reverse engineer who and what Neter ordained you to be. We have to even consider that a lot of people that we know, friends and family, loved ones and all, are walking around with pseudo identities or curated personas that are given to them by their race, sometimes their culture, their ethnicity, and sometimes their religion. And it's not a bad thing. It's just rather surface. It's not deep enough. It's surface until the source, which is the Neter and your Neteru and your ancestors, reveal themselves to you. So it'll be some fundamental basics, some fundamental morals, codes, and ethics on the surface, but you'll know these individuals by their obsession over trivialities about clothes or mixing fabrics or food and things like that. And there's no condemnation in that. All of those things are very important, but it doesn't really touch the essence of what it is that we're trying to talk about. We're trying to talk about getting an inner confirmation so you can release yourself from seeking external validation, because that's a source. External validation is often a source of much consternation in the lives of individuals. A lot of your stress comes from being concerned about how others will view you. For instance, look at Some people with such fascinating knowledge, but they have no peace, no inner peace. All of this fascinating knowledge, yet they're not truly and fully healthy through and through. All of this fascinating knowledge, and they can't seem or appear to shift their personal circumstances. It's almost like the knowledge is a burden to them, and they're isolated and almost tormented by their knowledge. And the only way they could get some reprieve or some rest is to disrupt other people's peace. Remember, I'm saying this is a talk and discussion about how to get your inner connection and your internal validation to release you from external validation, internal confirmation to release you from external validation. This is the beginning of how to protect your peace. And peace is nothing like, peace doesn't mean avoiding conflict. It takes a spiritual warrior to really appreciate peace. Only spiritual warriors have the privilege of peace. A spiritual warrior is a person who accepts everything about themselves and is committed to staying centered in life, irregardless of what happens. So a spiritual warrior is going to be at peace and enjoy themselves. Whether they're at war, they're going to be at peace because they're going to do what it is that they're meant to do. So if war is going to be it, they're going to be at peace being at war. And if there's no war, they're going to be at peace and centered with no war. The whole point is that I'm making is there is no such thing as peace if you didn't have a decision for the situation to go another way. So if you didn't have a decision or you was afraid of it going another way without, looking at your own personal best interest, then that's not peace. That's actually submission. And submission is the lowest vibration of that frequency of peace, if you understand what it is that I'm saying. You'll see certain individuals that try to bring certain energy. Like I know certain individuals that try to bring the Het Haru energy, and they try to see the world through the Het Haru energy and bring light and vibration and love. And then you'll have certain people side-eye that person and be like, they're doing too much. And I say, that's interesting. Why would you interpret that person as doing too much? Why would you interpret that person's positive energy as fake? You can have another individual that translates the world through the Mantu energy, the warrior energy, and they're constantly affirming that they're ready to get down. Just let them know, give me a call. Oh, you want me to get this person? Oh, you want me to get her? You want me to get him? And they be like, and people be like, oh, that person needs to chill. They're too extra. And I can say, wow, that's interesting that you have that approach about them. What about seeing these people as they understand their assignment in their life and they know exactly who they are and they're totally congruent with who they are? Could it be that if you're off put by a person who's bringing the Het Haru energy and you're defining it as fake, or you're off put by the warrior energy? Because mind you, we're in a community when crises happen, people are asking, where's the warriors at? Where the providers at? Where the protectors at? And yet you find a way to feel off put by the warrior that's letting you know that they're about that business. Maybe it's revealing a lack of self-love or a lack of love energy with yourself that's preventing you from embracing the Het Haru energy as she shows herself and tries to kiss you. Maybe the warrior is revealing a slice of your cowardice because you haven't quite know what it is that you stand for or what is it that you stand on, irregardless of the consequences. Once again, we're having to talk about protecting your peace as well as getting your internal confirmation to release yourself from the need for external validation. So let us get into it. Who is a Ujat? What is Ujat? Ujat and protecting one's peace. So Udjat is a Neteret, some say goddess, sometimes pronounces Wajet. Her symbol is a upraised serpent on the brow of the crown of the king or the reigning monarch. Sometimes you'll see the serpent on the brow along with the head of a vulture, or sometimes it's a mini vulture as well as the serpent on the brow of the crown of the Nasut. When both of these symbols are seen together, they are known as the Nebti or the Nabati, which are the two ladies. And they are protectors of the mental, physical and spiritual energy of the Nasut. Now, Ujat or Wajet is also known as the eye of Haru, but it's not just an eye. It is an eye, and in its inside corner is an upraised serpent again, which is reminiscent of what's known as Kundalini energy. And I know many of our African-centered scholars disagree. They think Kundalini is exclusively an Eastern concept, and they don't find any reference to it in Africa. And once again, I disagree with that. Actually, if you heard of a healer known as Credo Mutwa, you know, he's an ancestor now. Actually, he transitioned back in COVID. I remember we were actually doing a live communion, and I got news on my phone that he had passed, along with Dr. Laila Africa, along with Ahati Kalindi. I think they all died within or transitioned within 3 days of one another during the COVID era. But according to Credo Mutwa, he was one of the world's foremost authorities on African spirituality. He hailed from South Africa, and he said, according to his teachers in South Africa, they have the concept of Kundalini. In South Africa, they called it Umblini. And he defined it as he was taught by his father and the elders that it was a snake or serpent energy that was at the base of the spine that came up through the body and burst from the top of the head, connecting you with your ancestors and deities. I see that as very interesting when you look at the Asian cultures or the Hindu cultures. They have deities also. They have an ancestral tradition also, but they often speak about energies more so than deities or ancestors. But ancestors are energies, deities are energies. So here you have two systems really discussing the same thing. He also said that that energy is tamed or activated by way of the breath and learning how to calm oneself. So here it is, a South African shaman teaching about meditation in the systems of the South African, what do they call it? I think that the word is Nganga, or the healers, or Ngomas, South African Ngomas, they heal or learn how to raise that Umblini force through breathing and meditation. Interesting. Also, you have the Sand people in South Africa also, which is interesting because we teach in the Kemetic legacy that the whole culture of Kemet started in the South and it evolved up north, up further and further up north. So here we have a Kundalini serpent type tradition hailing from the South. Now you have the Sand people talk about an energy that exists in the base of the spine. And that's what they teach. That's what the world teaches about what Kundalini energy is. They teach that it's a metaphoric serpent coiled at the base of the spine. So this thing called Kundalini is a spiritual experience that's encapsulated in the metaphor of a serpent due to its undulating vibratory forces through the body. Now the Sand, they do a dance called the trance dance, which takes place over 24 hours, and they stomp on the ground, and they have a language which they do, which consists of clicks. So they're stomping and they're chanting and they're dancing for over 24 hours, which results in a resilient body and activated spiritual and psychic senses. So now you see the connection. So in the Hindu culture, they teach about Kundalini yoga and having a strong body and activating psychic senses. Credo Mutwa teaches that it's called the Umblini in South Africa. You raise the energy up and it bursts through your head, connects you with your ancestors and deities, which makes you healthy and increases your psychic forces. And now you have the Sand people who actually dance and activate this force to connect them with their ancestors and their deities. Interesting. So we have this phenomena of what happens when massive levels of electromagnetic energy is in the body, and certain things are done to manipulate that energy to go up the spine, to increase pressure in the brain, to release certain chemicals or hormones, to awaken something within you, to make you more aware or have a different relationship with breath, a different relationship with your own body, a different relationship with life and nature. Now, the word Ujat or Wajet, the root to the word is Waj, which means green, which means healing, which means healthy. So the Ujat is known as the healthy eye of Heru, the sound, healthy eye. So it's not just Kundalini energy raising, it's the healthy raising of the Kundalini energy that gives you a healthy new awareness of your relationship with your breath, a healthy new relationship with your body, a healthy new relationship with life as well as nature. So Ujat energy, when it's awakened, it represents your ability to translate electromagnetic energy, good, both good and bad, how something affects your electromagnetic field, what makes you strong and what makes you weak. Whatever's not making you strong makes you weak. And what makes you weak compromises your peace. So now there are certain things, certain crystals that you could get to fortify your electromagnetic field. You could get shungite or black tourmaline. Both black tourmaline and shungite, they block negative electromagnetic energy from impacting your electromagnetic field. It blocks negative psychic energy or all psychic energy, whether positive or negative, coming from others that may impact your electromagnetic field. Remember, if it's not making you strong, it's making you weak. And if it's making you weak, then it's compromising your peace. There are also, you could take moringa seeds or moringa powder or moringa leaf, which is what's known as a superfood, which is full of over 94 key and essential nutrients that the body needs. So what you're trying to do is you need your body strong enough to hold the electromagnetic charge of your auric field. And the body needs to be strong enough to be resonant with the vibrations of the spirit. So now we're talking about protecting your peace. If something doesn't make you stronger, it makes you weaker. And if it makes you weaker, then your peace is compromised. So we have to look at Ujat, psychic wellness in relationships. Now, over here in the Temple of Anu, we teach that excellence is our standard. So when we try to base our relationship on value, relationships should be based on value for value, not sentimentality. So if excellence is your standard, we're trying to teach you to be the personification of value, so you don't have to qualify to be valuable. You just go above and beyond with everything. So you're always the valuable one in the relationship. So if people are not meeting you at where you're at or going higher than you, then what we say before, if it's not making you stronger, it may be making you weaker. And if it's making you weaker, it might be compromising your peace. So we're talking about putting up healthy boundaries. So you don't have to go around cutting people off. You just have to learn to have healthy boundaries. Also, what about people who are exposed or who have been exposed to the same tools that you use for shift changing and transforming your circumstance, but somehow these people always want or need you to fix their particular situation? That could be problematic. Once again, if it's not making you strong, if your relationships are not making you better, they may be making you weaker, and it may be a time to put up healthy boundaries. This reminds me of a time back in high school, and it was a different day and time, and I just feel like back in the day, the education system were better. They were more complete. They were more balanced. I come from the suburbs. I didn't come from the hood. My parents came from the hood, left the hood to move in the suburbs because they had different standards and they wanted a better life for me and my brothers. So I come from the suburbs. And of course, every place has its hood, but when you go to so-called hood, when you go to school, the school becomes a crossroads of people with different backgrounds, hood, different races, suburbs, upper class. All of that is a crossroads at the public schools, or they were at one time. What's interesting is my parents never had money to afford name brand stuff. So I would look, I guess, more what you would think would be hood, but the so-called hood people always will have the name brand things. And I think their parents sent them to school to make a statement that the people across town or the people in the middle class neighborhoods were not better than them. So all the so-called hood people always came sharp. And interestingly, they always had an upper hand. They also had street knowledge. So they also had a couple of points over everybody else. But what I'm getting to, everybody was pretty much on the same level. We were all in the same classes, got similar grades from grade school to high school. And then something happens at the later part of the high school to after high school, people start making different decisions. I don't know if it's something in their genetics or things that go on at home or their family or background or whatever, or trauma or whatever. Something happened like right after high school that these people, all of these people that were your friends and your peers, that all of us appeared to be equal, and we all started making different decisions. Where am I going with this? So here we are as conscious people. We're adults, and our lives have become, many of us have become obsessed with trying to fix the problems of many people who actually were exposed to the same information and the same tools that we were, and they just chose different. So once again, I'm not telling anyone or not implying anyone not to help anyone. One of the quotes from one of the texts said, if everyone shared bread, then no one would be starving. So of course, help others, but first help yourself. Just like you have to heal yourself before you try to heal others. In business, they tell you to pay yourself first before you start paying a whole bunch of bills. Pay yourself first, help yourself first, heal yourself first. We're talking about boundaries. So if people have been exposed to the same tools that you have, but expect for you to fix their certain circumstances, back to once again, if the relationship is not making you better, it could be possibly making you weaker. And that weakness could be compromising your peace. So you might need to consider putting up healthy borders. So once again, it's not about cutting people off. It's about having healthy borders. Now, earlier in the year, Himmet Mbara did a reading, and she said the deity of the year was Ujat, which is interesting. You all heard me do 3 communions on Impu as the deity of the year of the 9 beginnings and endings and all of that. 2 things could be true at the same time. Remember, we consider the creator the Yit Mut Netir, or the Mut Yit Netir, the mother, father, creator, the father, mother, creator. There's balance. According to her reading, it says that we needed to fall back from social media. Social media is burdening our psyche and our psychic senses. And I agree with that. There's a lot that goes on in social media. Social media could confuse you and your identity. Being too much engrossed in social media can have you stuck, and you're not making moves in life the way you're supposed to, because you're too caught up in other people's opinions and the news. Understand, the human nervous system wasn't meant to hear and interact with so many people. We are people that come from enclaves or settlements of people that were anywhere between 70 to 120 people, sometimes more. And that qualifies as a nation, 70 to 120 people. So we had enclaves and settlements. That's the type of background we come from. That's the type of ancestry we come from in Africa as well as over here. So now in these enclaves, you'll have the chief, you'll have the chiefess, you'll have the healer, and then you will have the council of elders. And those group of individuals knew everything that everybody in the settlement needed to know. So you got all your perspective from these individuals, and it was their job to know everything about who you were and your culture as a people. Now contrast that now in social media, you could have 12 people that you listen to on social media, and all of them conflict each other in their views and opinions. So what happens to your nervous system constantly listening to other people talk in their views and their opinions and everything? And then eventually you get stuck because you get confused, because each one of those people actually have convincing arguments. So you wind up being stuck, when in reality, you have to make the decisions for your life, not these people online, not even myself. I can't make decisions for you. I can only lay down things. I'm the chief and the elder of the village, and I'm just telling you who and what it is that we do and how we're supposed to approach things based on our tradition. I can't speak to the people of the next tribe or the next religion or anything else or anywhere else in the world. I can only speak for us that's claiming to walk the Afro-Kemetic tradition. So you get in the situation where almost like you lose your identity and you lose your empowerment. And a lot of people now currently, they're very dissatisfied with what's going on with the government and stuff. And they're like, how did we get to this place? And all of us participated in why and how things are the way they are now. We have to always take responsibility for our part that we play in things. Every current situation is a crystallization of prior situations. Napoleon said history is a lie agreed upon. And that we're seeing that to be true now. If you study history, and it's almost like a lot of things that a lot of us stood so strongly on, and all these strong stances, the more research is coming out and people are having to shift, change, and adjust some of their perspectives. So Napoleon was right. History is a lie agreed upon. I take it to the next level. I said reality is a lie agreed upon. So what we see and what we experience in life is something that we're all participating in, whether directly or indirectly. I would even say that inaction is an action. So if you don't believe that you had anything to do with the political direction, that's just untrue. So your inaction, whether you voted or didn't vote, your possible inaction supported somebody else's action. And all of this was meant for you to take a few steps back and review yourself. Who are you? What about your relationships, your interrelationships, your network, or your lack thereof? Did you hear that? Your lack thereof relationships, your lack thereof interrelationships, your lack thereof network. So here it is, a person claiming knowledge. I'm God in person, having a spiritual experience, or whatever that people say. I'm a divine being, yet you have no influence in the world. That's a contradiction, because those that are in tune with the God energy are always powerful and always influential and always magnetic and always charismatic. What I'm telling you is there's different ways to interpret what's going on in life. So if you don't like certain things in a political direction, maybe you need to check yourself. Maybe you need to activate your network, improve your relationships, your interrelationships, your network. Instead of picking and destroying people's property, maybe you need to put a word in someone's ear who's going to put words in another person's ear that's going to put words in a key individual's ear that can change something. Could it be that you are the answer? So if you're spiritual and if you're powerful and you're charismatic, you're magnetic and you're influential and you're centered and you're self-aware and you know yourself and you love yourself and you're at peace with yourself, maybe you might need to ask for introduction. Remember, work your network, your relationships, your interrelationship. Maybe you need to ask for introductions to meet key people. If you don't want to be the person to make the change, put yourself in the vicinity of people that make the changes. And maybe by a conversation that they have with you could shift, change, and transform their perspective. You see, I'm just showing you how all things are interconnected and that you have to remain self-aware as you go about trying to make change. So now the self-aware person doesn't see things as bad. They now shift, and because they are in tune with the divine energy, which is love, peace, happiness, and power, and things like that. So instead of seeing things negative in the world, which are pretty much crystallizations of old thought forms, the future is still to be made. The future is to be made now in the current. So instead of looking about what's not right in life, now you start looking at the who's, the what's, the where's, the why's, the when's, the how's, on how power, peace, joy, and resilience is going to come in the world by way of you, because you're the opener of the way. And that becomes the next self-fulfilling prophecy. That's how spiritual people are supposed to go about things. So Ujat is about guarding your energy. Once again, Ujat, the Neteret Ujat, is a symbol for the personification of learning to guard your energy, knowing how energy can be manipulated, knowing how energy is manipulated. Remember, if something is not making you stronger, it's making you weaker. And if it's making you weaker, it's compromising your peace. So guarding your energy is releasing yourself from the need to be liked or even understood. I repeat, guarding your energy is releasing yourself and giving yourself resolution from the need to be liked or even understood. Guarding your energy is not allowing others to gaslight you from self-prioritization to self-sacrificing. It's about not letting people gaslight or hijack your nervous system and gaslighting you into thinking everything that you are and who you become is only to benefit them and other people, but never yourself. Yeah, you ever have people get jealous or mad at you for having to choose you first? No, that's gaslighting. That's what you call hijacking your nervous system. So protecting your peace or guarding your energy is releasing yourself from that phenomenon. Now, Ujat as the energy of the year in contrast to Inpu as the energy of the year. So Inpu, like we got it, we did that already with 3 communions talking about death, transition, radical change, closure, completion. So now we have the feminine, the snake, and we know snakes shed their skin. A lot of people don't like the symbology of the snake, but they got that from their Judeo-Christian background with Eve in the garden and the snake speaking to her, and she transgressed, and she got Adam to transgress, and they got kicked out of heaven. And ever since then, the human race has been scared of snakes or serpents. However, Jesus said, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So that's representing the duality of life. So nothing is ever what you really think it is. The snake is a metaphor that can be used in a positive sense as well as it can be used in the negative sense. So Jesus said, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So the snake sheds its skin. So we talked about Inpu dealing with death, completion, closure, transition, radical change. The snake sheds its skin, it corresponds to the same thing, letting things go, layers, old stuff, completion, close, the old, out with the old, in with the new. So when the snake sheds its skin, it doesn't become a new snake. It's still a snake, but it's a truer version of the snake. And what's interesting about Ujat or Wajet is the root to the word, which is Uj or Waj. Remember, Waj means green, Waj means healing, which is the root to the word Saruj. I think I gave that 2 communions ago. Saruj means to restore, to make new again, to fix what was broken. So you have Saruj, the root is Wuj or Waj, and then you got Ujat, Ujat. So when that snake sheds its skin, you're actually preparing yourself to come forth, relaxed, refreshed, renewed, and ready to continue living in peace and empowerment as a divine being in the flesh. Because we're not part of a tradition which teaches you that it is the destiny of a human being to suffer. The purpose of human life is wholeness. So I trust that you've all gotten a lot of layers from the many lessons in this session, and I hope you could appreciate it. As you see, we're going in a different direction. So I'm reapproaching the Kemetic legacy and making sure that all the teachings are functionable, applicable, and livable. So no more just learning just for the sake of learning. Although being a conscious person, learning should be your favorite pastime. But when you come to the doors of the temple or the representatives of the source, all discussions are supposed to be about getting the best out of life and being the best version of who you are, and not just who's the blackest and who's the most African. Even though that is very near and dear to many of us, because if you look at our cultural expression is clearly unapologetic Kemetic and unapologetically African. But that's not the whole of who we are. What we said was understood should need to be said. So we're going more in the direction of paying attention to the not so obvious, the subtle. The nature of the spirit is not so obvious and subtle. So when we start investigating the not so obvious, now we can begin to uncover why we may have been missing the mark so much. So with that said, if you're interested in learning more of an inside view or inside perspective of the legacy, I want you to email us at templeofanu@gmail.com and inquire about our first Eye on Kemet course, which we get into these conversations, where these conversations are the order of the day. So if you want to use these teachers to improve your personal life, as well as be a part of or connected or at least affiliated with something greater than yourself, once again, contact us immediately about getting 50% off of the first Eye on Kemet course. As I said before, we don't want any more than 20, but no less than 10 individuals. So get with us as soon as possible. We're looking to start as early as June. So once again, get with us about that. And lastly, if you appreciate the direction that we're going and you want to support it so it can be even more profound and more impactful, we appreciate if you want to give some reciprocation or remuneration to us, any denomination that you like. It could be $5, $20, $25, $50, $100, whatever. We all appreciate it, and we all always use it immediately for the betterment of how we present ourselves, as well as the legacy of our ancestors and the neteru of our ancestors to you all. So with that being said, I leave you by saying Shemi Matep, Dianu Uncle Jah Semed.